Derrick Henry, we're talking about, has an ankle injury. I actually thought he was going to be traded, but I guess not. Trade deadline is come and gone. What do you got on Derrick Henry?
He's off the injury report. Good to go tomorrow night. You can ride him as you normally would with a rookie quarterback starting. He'll probably get a lot of touches.
All right. Sounds good. Will Levis looking pretty damn good. Pepper in a guy we're going to talk about in a minute, DeAndre Hopkins. But Will Levis, all right, man. 19 for 29, 4 touchdowns. And Derrick Henry, man, still a serviceable high-end RB2, maybe a low-end RB1. You know, he's in that RB1 mix. Again, just a guy based off volume, but still not breaking down. Had over 100 yards this past week, I believe. Still the king. But Spears is a guy, 100%, especially Dynasty. Spears is a guy that should be looked at with a rose-colored sunglasses, I guess, so to say, and positively. But I think even in redraft, Spears is a guy that is involved and should be rostered should anything happen to Henry. Won't be traded at this point, but just in case, that day does come. All right. On to receivers. Let's actually skip. We'll do Puka next, but let's go stick with the same team, Tom. Let's talk about DeAndre Hopkins. Toe injury. Had a hell of a game, but short turnaround. They play tomorrow or today, depending on when you listen. What's up with D-Hop?
Really quick turnaround, and here's what we know. He had a limited practice Tuesday, followed by not practicing today. This guy has been in the league for a long time. He's missed a lot of practices, and he's played in a lot of games, and he's played very well in a lot of games. He simply doesn't need to practice. We haven't gotten any reports that this is a major toe injury. They've been kind of quiet on it. And the fact that he practiced in some capacity Tuesday makes me optimistic about this. Yes, toe injuries can be bad. They absolutely can be if they are moderate or severe severity. If they're mild, they're usually not that bad. And once the player gets warmed up, it feels fine. This year, we've seen Calvin Ridley, Terry McLaurin, Amon-Ra St. Brown all have toe injuries and it not affect their game whatsoever. Sure, Ridley, his numbers haven't been great, but he's getting open. He's just dropping touchdowns. McLaurin, he's been hit or miss. That's how he's always been. And he's with the second-year quarterback, there's not going to be consistency there most of the time. These guys have not been limited by toe injuries. From everything I'm seeing so far with Hopkins, I don't think he's going to be limited either. Now, as people listen to this on Thursday, right before the game, make sure that you check in on the reports the hour or two before the game, because that's where the key information is going to come. That's where we'll know, is it a situation where he's questionable, but he's going to warm up and see how he feels or whatever. Or maybe they'll tell us he's on limited snaps. Then you start to make some decisions on if you're going to start him or not. But based off how Levis was peppering him the other day, and this guy has so many times in his career he's not practiced and then gone out and played well. Yeah. At this time, Wednesday night, I think he's going to be fine. But, of course, we got to check in again tomorrow before the game.
All right, we got to stay frosty on Hopkins. And, Tom, aside from learning about his injury, and now I'm not worried about him, my biggest takeaway was your quote there. DeAndre Hopkins, he simply doesn't need to practice. That's a good one. I love it.
Allen Iverson would be proud.
Practice. Now, diving a little bit further into Hopkins, who's had an epic NFL career. What a stud. What a guy. He's still going. He's had a very interesting game log this year. So he had the one huge game last week. I mean, only 4 catches, nonetheless, 128 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he had that huge game. He's had one good game, one decent game, and then 4 games that I just put as meh games, where between those 4 meh or bad games, averaging just 5.8 points per game. So he is another guy that's hit or miss. Targets are not necessarily there, but it's because the offense has typically and probably still will run through Henry. But again, I just don't see a world where you're going to bench a superstar off an absurd, ridiculous fantasy game and NFL game itself with the 3 touchdowns. Even if he is limited, I still think I pull the trigger on him. There's really no way I could sit him. Is probably going to be a low-scoring game. I mean, that's kind of the story of the NFL season. I've never seen this many unders or low scores, but they do play Pittsburgh, who last week Pittsburgh let up a lot of yardage to Christian Kirk, Travis Etienne, Ridley, Ingram, so on and so forth. But again, Hopkins, Tom doesn't seem worried. And I think if I have him, I'm pulling the trigger there.